pleasant morning to each and everyone. My name is Mark Nasilti Kaging from BSIS 1-1, and we are the Group 2, and we would like to present about the international political economy. Today, I would like to discuss to you about the introduction of international political economy. So IPE is also called as global political economy. So it is in a very simple way, it is the study of the relation of economics into politics and the relationship of states into markets. IPE also examines how politics can be used for economical goals and how to utilize economics in political institutions. So basically, IPE is the correlation or the study of the economics in politics in an international borders or arena. To simplify, international political economy is all about how politics can be used for economic purposes and how economics can be used for political purposes. And also, as what I've said earlier, it is correlated with each other. So it has a connection. So we cannot attain each other's goal while neglecting one side. And also, like for example, we cannot know more about what is economics if we neglect politics. And we cannot know what are the ideas and what is the politics is all about if we neglect the ideas of economics. So to know more about international political economy, European Union is a regional union founded in 1993 on Euro, wherein there are 27 members like Germany, France, Italy, and Serbia. So European Union is a organization that frequently use economic tools to achieve their political goals. Politics and economics have been linked since the earliest days of humanity, when governments coordinate goods and services of production and distribution. Chapter, we will gonna know what is international political economy in international field or arena. We will gonna answer these questions like how should international trade can be governed, how should international investment can be governed, and how should international finance can be governed. And lastly, what are the roles of the organizations or unions like IMF, World Bank, or World Trade Organization in the governance, field, or investment. On this lesson or chapter, we will gonna have our objectives or goals that we need to attain. So international political economy will help you to be more enlightened about what is the meaning and nature of IPE, what are the three theoretical perspectives and the most influential from it, from liberalism, Marxism, mercantilism or nationalism, and the survey of the most influential national political economy in the world, including their divergences. And lastly, you will gonna know more about the core institutions, issues, and its governance.
A pleasant day to my fellow future global leaders. I am Irish Daphne Maraan of BSIS 1-1 of Group 2, and I am going to report about the meaning and nature of international political economy. So first, before defining the concept of IPE, we should first note that there is no universal agreement on how IPE should be defined because the field of IPE rather, needs an in-depth analysis. So in this report, I will be giving you two definitions of international political economy so that we can clearly understand what IPE is all about. So the first definition is it is said to be the study of the tension between the two significant subjects of international political economy, namely markets, which are composed of self-interested individuals, and the firms that they operate And the second one is the states, which are the primary political institutions of the modern international system. The second definition is international political economy is defined as a field of inquiry that studies ever-changing relationships between governments, businesses, and social forces across history and in different geographical areas. Therefore, we can define international political economy as the study of how economic methods and theories influence or affect political ideologies. It looks and oversees at the interaction between economics, laws, and politics. So there are two central dimensions of international political economy from the word itself, political and economy. The first one is political dimension, which are the accounts used, um, which are the accounts for the use of power by a variety of factors, and these factors include individuals, states, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and transnational organizations. All of these actors stated they are the ones who make decisions about distribution of tangible and intangible things. So when we say tangible things, these are the materials that is capable to be perceived, especially by the sense of touch, like money and products. While intangible things can be defined as the assets or attributes like innovation and security. In most cases, politics are the ones who make the rules that pertains to how states and societies achieve or pursue different goals. The second one is economic dimension, which deals with how scarce sources are distributed among individuals, groups, and states. So when we say scarcity, it refers to the resources that is limited. So it means that we must do things efficiently in order to maximize the number of goods and services that we can produce. And now we can move on to the theoretical perspectives of international political economy. So the field of IPE highlights three dominant theories that provide political economies a rich understanding on how entities behave and interact with each other. So, there are three major theoretical perspectives regarding the nature and functioning of the international political economy. These are liberalism, Marxism, and nationalism, which is also known as mercantilism, and it is the oldest of the three perspectives that have been around for a long time, early in the 16th century or perhaps even earlier. So Friedrich List is a German-American economist that developed a more systematic analysis of mercantilism. But before that, let us first define the meaning of mercantilism. It is a theoretical and ideological perspective which defends strong and persuasive role of the state in the economy, both in domestic and international trade, investment, and finance. The goal of mercantilism is to build economic wealth, to build power of the state. Also, Friedrich List argued that national power is based on manufacturing and that economic values should be subordinated to the more important task of state building, and in order to promote industrial strength, the state must organize foreign trade and protect infant industries with tariffs and exclusionary devices. So the next one is liberalism, defined by Smith, L. Annis, and Farrans, is a diverse body of thoughts overlooking the anarchic realist approach of states as the sole actors in the global economy. The theories of liberalism was best stated by Adam Smith in his book The Wealth of Nations in year 1776, where he stated his idea saying that the key to national wealth and therefore national power is economic growth, and the key to economic growth is free trade, which is the free flow of goods and services and investments across borders. Smith also argued that political leaders should allow trade between nations to expand and deepen and keep the government intervention in the trade down to a minimum, which basically means that imports and exports should flourish with as little restriction as possible. Liberals want a marketplace to make the economic decisions, not the government. One is the Marxism, which is the youngest of the three perspectives of IPE, which sees the capitalist system and aristocrats dependent on labor force obtain their lucrative interests and growth. So it is a social, political, and economic theory that is originated by Karl Marx that focuses on the struggle between capitalists and the working class. Here, the power relationships between capitalists and the workers were inherently exploitative and would inevitably create conflicts that would immediately lead to a revolution in which the working class would overthrow the capitalist class and seize control of the economy.
Hello everyone, I am Rachel Ann Escobar and we're going to tackle the evolution of international economy, clashing ideas and practices. So in the late 18th centuries, different ideologies, beliefs, and technological changes emerged concerning the world economy. A lot of perspectives from different economies. There's Adam Smith, Alexander Hamilton, and Jean Colbert. But let me first discuss about Mr. Adam Smith. Mr. Adam Smith was an Scottish economist, philosopher, and also an author, and he is also considered as the father of modern economics. Smith brought the ideas of importance of free markets, assembly line production method, and gross domestic product formed the basis for theories of classical economics. Smith's most famous book is An Enquiry of the Nature and the Causes of the Wealth of the Nations, shortened to The Wealth of Nations. Smith popularized many of the ideas that form the classical economics. Other economists built on Smith's work to solidify the classical economic theory. The dominant school of economics taught through the Great Depression. The Great Depression was the worst economic downturn in the history of the industrialized world, lasting from 1929 to 1939. To 1939, it began after the stock market crashed on October 1929, which sent Wall Street into a panic and wiped out millions of investors. Smith's ideas are evident in the work of David Ricardo and Karl Marx in the 19th century, and John Maynard Keynes and Milton Friedman in the 20th century. Smith's work discusses the evolution of human society from a hunter stage without a property rights to nomadic agriculture with shifting residences. The next stage is a feudal society where laws and right property are established to protect the privileged classes. And that is where mercantilism entered. Mercantilism is the practice of many governments at that time. Mercantilism is an economic theory that trade generates wealth and is stimulated by the accumulation of the profitable balances, which government should encourage by means of protectionism. Well, when we say protectionism, it is a practice which government shielding the country's domestic industries from foreign competition by taxing imports. Here, the government are limiting their trades of imports and they are increasing the taxes, especially on manufactured goods. So let's move on to Mr. Jean-Baptiste Colbert. Jean-Baptiste Colbert is a powerful Minister of Finance under King Louis XIV of France. Colbert believes in the mercantilist doctrine that the expansion of commerce was the key to the state wealth. His policies, what became known as Colbertism, doted on his Carter companies, set up a protective system of tariffs and duties, blocked foreigners from trading in French colonies. By and large, Colbert was not interested in internal commerce. In his view, it did nothing to help the state. French farmers and small manufacturers were left locked in stifling the embrace of medieval. Restriction and internal tariffs on the movement of goods and labor remained in place. France's incredibly regressive tax system was reinforced. New big merchants, capitalists coddled with subsidies. The burden of taxes fell even heavier upon the luckless farmers and small-town craftsmen. Albert revived the hated corvée, the unpaid labor time owed by peasants to their feudal lords, and forced local farmers and their draught animals to work under road maintenance. Indeed, by the very setup of the system, the promotion of the former often meant great burdens for the latter. The ISEA system created a paradox. It generated a progressive external economy while allowing the internal economy to stagnate. Later, commentators like Marshal de Vauban, Claude Jacques Herbert, Pierre Peasant de Voiguive, and Vincent de Gournay raised their voices and called for the reform of fiscal and commercial system set up by Colbert. When Colbert died in 1683, his steady restraining hand on the king was released. 14th, released a expensively ruinous war lasts for 3 decades. After King Louis XIV died, the French state bankrupt, reviving a nostalgia for Colbert. Many French economists failed to rescue the French finances, making the Colbertism policies maintained on the Mr. Alexander Hamilton, the America's most influential founding fathers. He made his reputation during the Revolutionary War and played a key role in defending and ratifying the U.S. Constitution. Most pressing problems facing by the new government is the economic. As a result of revolution, a federal government had to acquire a huge debt of $54 million, including the interest. That time, foreign credit is unavailable, and the person who assigned to resolve this task is none other than the 32 years old Alexander Hamilton. As a Treasury Secretary, Hamilton designed a financial system that made the United States become the best credit risk in the Western world. He proposed that the government assume the entire debt of the federal government and the states. His plan was to retire the old depreciation obligations by borrowing new money at the lowest interest rate. Like Maryland, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Virginia, who already paid off their debts, saw no reason why they should be taxed by the federal government. Hamilton's critics claimed that his scheme would provide enormous profits to the speculators who had bought bonds to the Revolutionary War veterans for as little as 10 to 15 cents on the dollar. For 6 months, a bitter debate raged in Congress, until James Madison and Thomas Jefferson engineered a compromise. Hamilton's debt program was a remarkable success by demonstrating the Americans' willingness to pay off their debts. He made the United States attractive to foreign investors. Hamilton's next objective was to create a United States bank that was modeled like the Bank of England. A national government that would collect taxes, hold funds of the governments, and make loans for the governments and the borrowers. One critic against the bank was un-Republican. It may encourage speculation and corruption. The bank was also opposed on constitutional grounds, adopting position known as strict constructionism. Hamilton responded to the charge that a bank was unconstitutional by formulating the doctrine of implied powers. Hamilton argued that a Congress had a power to create a bank because the Constitution granted the federal government authority to do anything necessary and properly. Congress passed a bill creating the National Bank in a term for 20 years, leaving the question of the banks constitutionally up to President Washington. Finally, Hamilton proposed to aid the nation's infant industry through high tariffs designed to protect the American industries from foreign competitions. Government subsidies and government financial transportation improvements, Hamilton hopes to break the Britain's manufacturing holds on America. Hamilton's view of America's future challenged Jefferson's ideal of tilling the fields, communing with the nature, and maintaining personal freedom by virtue of land ownership. It's a political view that are not shared by most people. One such view, the so-called peacemaking theory, is based on the premise of violence creates violence advocates. A genuine socialist movement existed in France prior to the publication of Communist Manifesto in 1848. The real founder of modern socialism is Karl Marx. Marx's contribution to economic political theory, the theory of surplus labor, drew to French socialism and Hegelian philosophy, which means the radical alone is real. Only anarchists prove more radical. Lenin, a staunch defender of violent revolution, introduced a changed form of radical socialism to Russia in 1970. Positive profits were wages stolen from laborers by those who controlled the means of production. The solution to the problem of exploitation, Marx held a workers' revolution. A second concept in the Communist Manifesto was the idea of classical struggle, which Marx maintained would end only when the proletariat united against the bourgeoisie. The realist roots the policies of naval island country, dependent on a far-flung empire of raw materials producers. In theory, not only Britain's free trade policies required the peace, but also the unrestricted global conceptualized by Adam Smith and David Ricardo and their disciples connecting. After the end of World War II, we entered the most recent phase of internationalization. The 1930s saw the harmful effect of Beggar Thy Neighbor that shut off international trade. Beggar Thy Neighbor often refers to international trade policy that benefits the country who's enacting it while harming neighbors or trade partners. Protectionism is a key example of strengthening a domestic economy but may negatively impact trading partners. Protectionist barriers, tariffs, quotas, and sanctions that can hurt the economies of others. Beggar Thy Neighbor is not intended to hurt other countries' economy. It is just a side effect of policies of bolstering the country's domestic economy. The post-World War II system sought to promote the following: open trade, free flow of capital, and stable exchange rate. Under a free trade policy, goods and services can be bought and sold in international borders with little or no government tariffs, quotas, subsidies, or prohibition to inhibit their exchange. The term capital flows refers to the movement of capital when money investment goes from one country to another country. That is a capital flow, but this term does not include many people or businesses to purchase each other's goods and services. Countries, especially the developing ones, pursue a stable exchange rate to attract foreign capitals. They usually accomplishing this by fixing their currencies. This practice is called pegging. The national or central bank is decreasing or increasing the supply of money. So how can we study this development? Well, rational choices offers one way. Individuals are rational actors that has fixed and known preferences, meaning once we decided to do something, we can change it. Once it is done, we can undo something that is done. So in the rational choices approach, the study of international political economy is the study of how states make strategic choices. Social constructivists argue against rational choices. Preferences cannot be assumed and preferences can change anytime, meaning we don't know what is running on someone's mind. We can predict what he or she will going to do, so we don't have to give our fully trust because anytime he or she might betray you, just like the national leaders of our country who's using their brain, because even if that country is your ally, anytime he can attack you at the back or he can change his choices and preferences.
Mateo, and I will be discussing the basis of the contemporary of international economy. So first, what is basis? Basis is the underlying process for an idea, argument, or process. So contemporary means today or the present time, and economy, the wealth and resources of a country in terms of production and consumption of goods and services. So, key concepts in the liberal economy. Um, Liberal economy is the freedom, according to Smith, 1976, freedom of action for the individual and the firm is promoted through several principles, such as self-interest, free trade, laissez-faire, private property, and competition. So, liberal economics is based on the recognition that states differ in their resource endowments. Worldwide wealth is maximized if states engage in international trade. So, David Ricardo, a British political economist, developed a theory that states should engage in international trade according to their comparative advantage. So, what is comparative advantage? It is closely associated with free trade, which is seen as beneficial, whereas tariffs closely corresponds to restricted trade and zero-sum game. So, that is, states should produce and export those products which they can produce most efficiently relative to other states. These gains from trade are maximized for all because each state minimizes its opportunity cost. So it is more like producing products in a low cost for their own benefits if they will trade it with to another country. So national currencies should be bought and sold in a free market system. In such a system of floating exchange rates, the market determines the value of one currency as compared with other currencies. Floating exchange rates will lead to market equilibrium. So we're talking about the contemporary international economy. So in multinational corporations will be involved. So what is multinational corporations? It is organizations that operates worldwide or operates to different other country other than their own country. So they are the worldwide global competitors that are importing and exporting goods. So roles of multinational corporations or MNCs. MNCs play a key role as engine of economic growth because first, they act as the vanguard of the liberal economic order, and second, they have taken the integration of national economies beyond trade and money to include the internalization of production. So liberals sees MNCs as positive because the economic improvement is driven through efficiency and MNCs promote efficiency. So the multinational corporations perform many activities such as the direct import and exporting, making significant investments in a foreign country, buying and selling licenses in foreign markets, engaging in contract manufacturing, opening manufacturing facilities in foreign countries. So all of that activities are performed by the MNCs. Also, MNCs choose to operate in international markets for various reasons, all of which are based in economics, but which are affected by the political relations of the host state, like reduced transport costs by moving production closer to customers, tax and license advantages from local governments, and find cheaper and labor markets. Then fourth and last, obtain the services of foreign technical personnel. So some liberals are still discussing more further about the benefits of MNCs, because the international liberal economy may promote peace, and the liberal economics suggests a basic set of policies, all based on the minimal involvement of governments, free trade, open markets, and free flow of goods and services. So in this contemporary world, the multinational corporations are they operate worldwide rather, and also known as global enterprises. So products and services of MNCs are sold around various countries, which require global management. So it's like, performing or doing trade with different countries, and like importing and exporting goods for making profits, and like making investments for other foreign countries other than their own country. And as I said earlier, liberal economy is, the freedom, or the freedom of, doing trade or producing products and trade it with others. So that's it. Thank you.
Good day, I am Naomi Sergal from BSIS 11, Group 2, and I am responsible for the topic International Finance. So, international finance is known as the capital movement, which plays an important role in the earlier phases in the development of international political economy up now to this day. So, international finance's capital movement works in two ways. These are the foreign direct investment and portfolio investment. We can differentiate these two by remembering that first, FDI or foreign direct investment focuses on buildings and other facilities, while on the other hand, PI, which means portfolio investment, centers in the investment of stocks and bonds of a country. So that's how we can differentiate those two. So MNC, also known as multinational corporation, which means that corporation has facilities and other assets in one country. So it has facilities and other assets in at least one country other than its home country. So MNC. Since MNC has a connection in a country other than its homeland, right? This means that it can play a major role in the development of capital in the form of FDI and PI. So, critics later on realized that it is hard to attract private investments through other countries or states like Africa, who received 8% of private capital. So, the World Bank expanded its mission to help countries like Africa. Two institutions were soon implemented to deal with this problem. Number one is International Finance Corporation in 1956. This corporation's goal is to develop private enterprises for the responsibility of providing loans in developing countries. So, second institution is International Development Association in 1960. This association's goal is to provide capital to the poorest countries in the form of interest-free loans. So what is the meaning of interest-free loans? Interest-free loans it means that it has no interest charge on the money that has been borrowed. Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency in 1988 was later on implemented to this institution. So this loan provides everything that is lost from wars and conflicts. So these are the institutions the World Bank has implemented. Even though World Bank has its own programs developed, the institutions mentioned earlier, it was declined as a proportion of capital flow. So what is the meaning of capital flow? Capital flow refers to the movement of money for the purpose of investment, trade, and business operations. So next, exchange rate rises. Why did the exchange rate rises? It is for the traders to have advantage to change the currency in the markets and in MNC so that they can capitalize on buying and selling currencies. So what is the meaning of currency? So currency is the system of money in general use in a particular country. Market has made new financial instruments such as derivatives. So what is the meaning of derivatives? Derivatives can be packaged, sold around the world, and it is a contract that derives its value from the performance of an underlying entity. So examples of derivatives are future contracts, forward contracts, options, swaps, and warrants. So these are commonly used and commonly known as derivatives. So next, sovereign wealth funds. It became new economic actors, and they were formed in the capitalized surplus countries. So what is a capital surplus? Capital surplus is an account which may appear on the corporation's balance sheet, also known as the component of shareholders' equity. So it represents next economic liberalization. So economic liberalization is the one responsible for the exposure of the offshore financial centers. So it revealed that it has no low taxation or no regulation at all. So meaning that it started the crisis. So in 1990, the Asian financial crisis started. So it declared the outcome of globalization of finance. So in Thailand in 1997, the GDP of the country was only 2%. So for a country, 2% of GDP is way too low. So gross domestic product, or GDP, as said earlier, means that it is the monetary value of all finished goods and services made within a country during a specific period. So as said earlier, at the Thailand, only 2%. So that is because of the Asian financial crisis that took place in the 1990 rather. The crisis spread out through the countries Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, and eventually it reached out Russia and Brazil. Next, the IMF responded to the political and social disorder to the large issue that packages from the three affected countries, which is the Thailand, Indonesia, and South Korea, includes conditions that these countries were supposed to follow. So IMF means International Monetary Fund. So the meaning is it oversees the international monetary system. So next, governments had to carry out significant structural reforms that would transform their economies from semi-mercantilist to more open ones. So mercantilism, as said earlier, so mercantilism is the economic system of trade that was based on the idea that a nation, its wealth and power were best served in increasing exports and so involved increasing trade. Because the government wanted to reform the economies to be more open than to be a semi-mercantilist, two structural reforms were made. So first, lifting restrictions on the movement of capital. So it is very self-explanatory. So they had to lift regulations and rules for the sake of the capital movement. So second is cutting the government budget, particularly in social programs. So it is very easy to understand because they had to cut the budget of the government because they wanted it to be more open. So critics from the IMF focus on the moral of the hazard problem. So what is the moral hazard problem? States were rescued to the consequences of their reckless behavior, which provided encouragement for them to change their said